Hello, everyone. I'm iN-Hale Williams, and I am with my co author of our book, True Diversity Going Beyond the Pie Graph. I'll let him introduce himself, but I want to say congratulations, Jesus. Our book is a year old and it has been so well received. It's nearly all completely 5 stars on Amazon, and just the feedback we've received over this year has just been amazing. It was a pleasure writing this book with you, and it was even more of a pleasure meeting you 4 years ago. It's 4 years ago now that we met and decided to collaborate on this. So happy anniversary to the book, and congratulations to you.
Well, Nathan, thank you. It could never have done this without you, as well as some of the incredible people that you introduced me to as we were writing the book, to include Antonius Porch and Flora Lee, Ruben King Shaw, Juan Mejia, Cheetah Binet, and Cherise Torres for that unbelievable forward, I'm sorry. So thank you to all.
Yeah, we really had some rock stars, join us in the production of this book. I have to say that one of the things that I love about writing is discovery myself, right? I am an avid learner. I'm a voracious learner and a voracious reader. And so in working with you in this book and doing the research with you, I learned so much and I expanded my knowledge and my understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I want to talk about some of our concepts in the book, how we got here, and have you introduce yourself to all of the readers who've actually read the book and people who potential readers that have not read the book yet. You can get the book everywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everywhere online. It's called True Diversity: Going Beyond the Pie Graph. So let's jump right in. We start the book by talking about your background, which I found so fascinating when we were first, discussing the book and just who you are. So tell us a little bit about your background and why that lent itself to writing this book.
So Nathan, my name, first of all, gives me away to some extent. The name is Jesus Leal. It translates to loyal to Jesus. And the reason why is I was born in communist Cuba, under 4 pounds, did not think I was going to make it. So they called me loyal to Jesus and said, thanks for the vote of confidence, Mom. Um, I grew up, immigrated from Cuba, fled to Spain, Spain to the United States, and moved into a place called West New York, New Jersey. And that was such a diverse neighborhood. And what it allowed me to do is people see 1 plus 2 equals 3. I don't see 1 plus 2 equals 3. I see 1 plus 2 equals 8 minus 5, 7 minus 4. There's a lot of different ways of getting there. And that's what growing up in a diverse neighborhood does for you.
So tell me a little bit more about your family's life in Cuba and immigrating through Spain to the United States, because it's such a very fascinating and interesting story, and I think important to your overall story. Obviously, it's your origin story.
Well, thanks for the opportunity of doing that. Our family was originally from Spain and the Canary Islands. We immigrated to Cuba 3 generations before, and we started businesses, farming, sugarcane. We had homes, had bank accounts. We employed a lot of people. And as part of the revolution, soldiers confiscated the land, bank accounts, and we lost everything. My parents were both teachers. My dad was very vocal against a communist regime. We ended up having to leave for Spain for asylum, and we spent 3 months in Spain, being vetted and making sure that we weren't communist spies coming to America. And we arrived in America in September of 1965.
And you talk about having a lot in Cuba. Your family was, doing very, very well in Cuba. And then, by the time you got to Spain, talk about the possessions you had and some of the important things that your mother, that you've kept over the years. Because I think it's remarkable to know from where you started and then how you've ended up and all the stuff that, led us to this book.
Oh, now, Nathan, you can bring tears to my eyes because I don't think I would have had the courage that my mom and dad had. They were in their early 30s. When we left Cuba, you'd think you're going to leave with suitcases and everything else. This little tiny chain is that little chain is the only thing that she was able to metal was the only thing she was able to smuggle out. We were allowed 3 pieces of clothing each. So that could be a pair of pants, a pair of shoes, and a t-shirt. That's it. And we worked our way back into society in America. We became educated, and now it's our turn to try to help others do what we did.
Amen. It's such a remarkable story of your parents, your family, and then you land in West New York. Tell me about the makeup of that neighborhood and who was there when you got there.
When we first landed in West New York, the highest population was probably Irish, Italian, some German. There was unskilled labor in the embroidery factories. So my parents, that were both educators, my dad was a college educator, my mom was high school level, and they both had to take jobs in embroidery because they did not understand the English language. And they had they had two young children they had to feed.
And and what was that, what was it like growing up there, as a kid? And then, if we can just, kind of skyrocket to you as a high school student, because I think your experience in high school, well, I know your experience in high school was a great foundation for your understanding of the importance of diversity.
As a kid, we grew up in apartment buildings, and when you grow up in a 12, 13, 14-story building with no elevator, and you live on the ninth floor, you thank God you don't live on the 12th. So it taught you to be grateful for what you have, not what you don't have. And what was amazing was the ability of us as migrants into that neighborhood. And you had people coming from Cuba, South America, Central America, all over the place. And West New York was also African Americans into West New York. And before there weren't any. And growing up like that and getting to know people and making friends with everyone and anyone, because getting along in a diverse neighborhood meant security.
So talk to me about your experience in high school and what it was like, because you kind of straddled two different groups, two different cliques. You were super smart and you were in, advanced classes, but you were also cool and you were an athlete and cool with the jocks. And talk to me about that and how it plays into your understanding of diversity.
Well, it's great because it truly speaks to diversity at all levels. And I was in the college prep classes. I was the second to the valedictorian at the school, but at the same time, I was with the guys that were drinking beer a little too early in life and playing hoops out till late at night when allowed. And you just, as I said, in high school, West New York High School was one of the largest high schools in the state of New Jersey, predominantly minority at the time, and yet was ranked the number one high school, a public high school in the state. And I think it had to do a lot with people having each other's backs. And it was not uncommon to find someone from an honors class helping a kid get by so he can play football.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the of the many similarities that we discovered in this process, is that I also went to a public high school that was predominantly minority, predominantly Black in Chicago, called Whitney Young. I think our most famous alum is former First Lady Michelle Obama. Probably the second most famous. I'm just kidding. But it was a very unique experience, I think, to other people, because I grew up in that environment. We were the #1 school. We were the best of the best. And so I always grew up with that around me, that surrounded by Black, Latino, Hispanic, Asian people who were super exceptional. And I think that, has had such an effect on my worldview. So we share that. That's one of the things we share. But I'm sorry, continue about, you kind of straddling both groups.
Oh yeah, no. So I had to get along with the kids that played ball and the kids that weren't doing really great in school, and at the same time, I was in the honor society, and you basically got along with everyone. Um, and again, I think I became the president of the high school because I was able to pull from both sides, and that diversity taught me that your strength comes for the greatest number of people that you can interact with and that you can bring along.
And we'll talk about this a little bit later too. And that translates into business. The more people that you can bring along to your product, your service, the more services and products you'll sell. We talk about diversity being a bottom line one of the considerations is the, primary considerations is the bottom line, but that plays into to what we talk about later. I want to fast forward a little bit to college years and then grad school and all of that. You go and you're a chemistry major, but then you get convinced to think about pharmacy, right? Give me that and how we got there, and that professor of yours that was your favorite.
So my professor was Louis Marchesani, and we were back in the days of one of the last recessions in the 70s. And he said to me, if you want to recession proof your life, get yourself a job that requires a license to do it. It blocks anyone without a license from doing your job. And that made it easy. The transition went from chemistry to pharmacy, because anybody can do chemistry if you've got a chemistry degree, but you can't dispense drugs unless you're a licensed pharmacist. And I thank him every day.
Tell me about that funny time when you were at a dinner and his wife was there and you said something and everyone thought you were about to say something different than what you said. Tell me about that moment.
So this was actually in college. A professor of mine, Dr. Medwick, who in my next to last year of pharmacy school was able to get me a job at Roche Labs for the summer. I was the only student who aced both of his semesters in analytical chemistry. And I went up to the table where he's sitting with the dean of the school, his wife, and all their spouses. And I interrupted the table and I said, Dr. Medwick, you know what? You did not teach me much about science. And you could have heard a pin drop.
I know everyone was like, oh my God, what is he going to say?
and then I looked at him and I said, you taught me something much, much bigger. You taught me about life. And when I said that, he cheered up. He got up, gave me an incredible hug. And he said, that's been my goal my whole career. And I teach a lot of science, but there's very few people come back to me and say something like that. And we owe that to our youth. We owe it to our youth that one thing is keep them in school, like my dad says, in school, out of school, out of the house. But it goes beyond that. It's about how do you apply what you learn into life and make it a better place for a lot of people.
And, I have to say, getting to know you well during the process of this book, you really embody that, Jesus. Like you really walk that walk. And the empathy that you brought to the subject matter has just, was just great. So let's fast forward again. Obviously you have had such a wonderful life, an illustrious life. If you want to know more about, Jesus's journey read the book, True Diversity, because there's also a section about his wonderful three daughters that changed his, the outlook on things, that all added to his worldview that led to true diversity. But one thing that I want to, before we get into the core of the substance of the book, is so then you start having a great career in pharma, right? And what about your career during your time in pharma informed what would become the basis for the principles and foundation of the true diversity approach?
You hit on an incredible topic, because I was fortunate to land a job in the pharmaceutical industry right out of pharmacy school, and I became the youngest manager in the history of Sharing Plow, big pharma company. And despite that, I saw my career just come to a little bit of a stop. And I was there for almost 8 years. I won multiple sales awards, but I would not have the opportunity to advance my career into the home office. And in my 8th year, one person came up to me. He said, "Jesus, they're afraid of you. You frighten them." And I'm a guy with some good street smarts, but that shocked me, because you know you see things that frighten you out in the streets, but at work, what could possibly frighten you? We're on the same team.
Right.
And so I left shortly after that, and I was hired by an African American manager, Larry Somerville, probably one of the best managers I've ever had in my entire life. And Larry basically said, "I will help you get to what you need or what you want." And that was enough for me to say goodbye to my old employer, and jump ship and join Larry at his company.
So, what was embedded in that? Did you discover along the way, and did you have other experiences of people being afraid of you? And what was the code underneath that?
You know, uh, it's a really good question. I think people are afraid of unknown, and I'm an unknown. When I said before that people see 1 + 2 is 3, and I see, wait, I see 8 - 5. I see it differently, and they can't see that. That frightens people. And instead of embracing the different views, some people put up roadblocks. Sadly, it took me almost 10 years to figure that out. So I had to change my tune. I would, uh, I'm very analytical, so I can see something, put 2 and 2 together, and go right at it. I've learned that I can't do that. I need to enroll other people into the view that I've got, and then in a corporation help me bring it through.
That's one of the lessons that I learned when I was younger in my 20s, and in a non-corporate setting. I was, in a group house, a summer house, and we were getting ready to throw an event. And I was an event planner at the time, and so it was one of those moments where I was like, "Why do I have to have this?" And I'm anti-meeting, and in all regards, like I don't like meetings to go longer than 30 minutes because I usually feel like people are inefficient in meetings, and a lot of companies have meetings just to have meetings. To have them, they have a meeting in preparation for the meeting. Yep, and so in any event, I was just, I was young and hot-headed, and I didn't want to have the meeting because I knew what I was already an ace event player. And I was like, just give me the money and I'll go do it. And my friend James Grooms, who I actually had a law firm with many years ago, he just pulled me aside. He said, sometimes you have to let people go along with you in the process to feel that they're included, even though you know good and well that you're going to go and you can do all this by yourself. But in order for people to have buy-in and for people to feel like they are a part of the process, sometimes you have to let them go along the journey with you. And it's one of the greatest things that I learned in business. And I know this is a little off topic, but it's also, our book is about business, right? And it's a business book. I think that's one of the greatest lessons I ever learned about you have to involve people in the process. And I think the truth, that is true too in the diversity process, right? You can't just tell people this is what we're going to do, and then don't involve them in the process of developing a strategy, which I think is a great segue. What is true diversity? For people who haven't read the book, or even for people who have read the book, tell me what is true diversity in your own words, and then how you came up with this concept.
True diversity is a wake-up call. That's what it really is. It's a wake-up call for companies that are spending millions of dollars on D&I programs that have not moved the needle. Okay, we can get into why they haven't moved the needle. It's based. It's not as complicated as it seems. It hasn't moved the needle because the diversity, the programs and the pie graphs that they use are all internal. They look at things internally. So a current HR presentation may look like this. They'll show a pie graph or a table, how many African Americans you have, and minority and Hispanics and women, and then how many of them are in management, and then are A and B greater this year than they were last year. Well, that's great to see a nice little picture looking better, but in the future, as what true diversity is. True diversity will shape that conversation from HR to say, okay, that presentation should basically say, what does my customer look like today? What's that customer going to look like 5, 10, 15 years from now? What unique challenges will our new customer base have in the design of the product, in the specs of the product, in the delivery, in the service? And then how many people have we hired that truly understand why those changes are being made and what changes need to be made so that we're successful? And how has the inclusion of these individuals led us to a better P&L and a better bottom line? So, simple example, if you're in the pharmaceutical industry that I'm in, and you've got a product that might be $40,000-$50,000 for a month, and you're shipping it to somebody's house, you can't ship it into an apartment building and leave it on the ground floor. You've got to find a better way of getting it to them. So you know what happens? The health equity of these people suffer because they never get the products.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a flaw, not of where they live or who they are. It's a flaw of the management team behind that product that doesn't understand that they got to be able to find a way of getting these products to these patients.
I
So
love that. You know, when people ask me about the book, the way I break it down, and I want you to elaborate on this. And I think, you know, when we first started talking about the concept, and you told me you come up with this, I thought immediately, brilliant, right? Immediately I wanted to be involved, and immediately I wanted to write this with you, because I do think it's a wonderful and novel way to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion. Going back to your statement and piggybacking on that, and I always, whenever I'm doing a DE&I speech, I talk about, I'm just upfront. I said, these things usually don't work, you know, and they don't move the needle, as you said. But I think the way we outline true diversity in the book, I think is a better approach to it. And this is the way I break it down. So at the top level is understanding that the pie graph is two-dimensional, and it cannot, like, two people within, you may have two Black people, but just saying that they're Black doesn't tell you anything about them, right? And that's one level. And we can talk about that a little bit more. Then the next level is understanding your consumer and who your consumer is, and how they, you know, engage with your products and services, and that you need to understand that to fuel your diversity case, because more than likely than not, your consumer is a diverse consumer. So if your workforce is a monolith and you're trying to market or sell products and services to a diverse consumer, then you're going to miss the mark, because you're not going to understand concepts like leaving a $50,000 drug in an apartment building. And then I think the third layer is, once you truly have a diverse workforce, right, and that, you know, kind of mirrors what your consumer base is, then how do you include them in the process of making decisions within your company? Because a lot of companies say, we want this pie graph to be filled, and we want to meet a quota or whatever of this many people that look like this many women or whatever. But then they want the people, once they want this diverse workforce, once they show up, to look and act like them.
Yeah.
And that misses the whole point. I want you to elaborate on all of those concepts as you see it and as you developed it.
Absolutely. The worst thing you do is play the pie graph game, which you present these beautiful charts and you show the world how great you're doing. But then it does not result in any movement to the bottom line. And why that becomes important is because companies will invest where the greatest return is. And if you have goods and services where your customer base is becoming more and more diverse every day, and you have another one that may not be, and you channel your efforts towards the other one, and you see a better return, despite the fact that this opportunity might be greater, you abandon it.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we're not going to be talking about health equity today, but that's something you and I can talk about for a future date, because there are a lot of things that we can change. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about when you said you can have two African Americans or two Black people and they may look the same. The book talks about diversity quotient. And I give my middle daughter credit for helping me develop the equation that you can actually measure differences. And I'm going to show you real amongst people, amongst individuals that may look similar, but could be totally diverse, one from each other. And the example that I use in my book is two Cubans born in Cuba, living in Cuba before the revolution. One did not own any property. The other one, and that person who did not own property or a bank account joins the Fidelista movement and becomes a card carrying member of the Communist Party for the rest of their life. Nothing changed after where they were before. The other one owned businesses, bank accounts, everything, and lost everything, right? And has to flee. Maybe family members were persecuted, put in jail. They had to flee the country. Those two people in a pie graph equal one, each of them. But you could not get more diverse between two different people. So this is why I think when they look at a pie graph in and of itself is biased, because you're stereotyping people into little slices. But yet, man, they're so different. You even in the United States, a person of color born in Detroit could be is totally different, or could be totally different from one born in Birmingham, Alabama. And
Yes,
we,
and their interactions with the world are quite different.
correct,
And their interactions with within their, their home communities and their hometown is quite different.
correct.
So talk to me about this. Why, and this is, put your salesman hat on. Why true diversity, right? Why, if I am a corporate exec, because we always talk about in the book that this is a top-down approach, right? That it has to come from the highest levels of senior management, executives, the C-suite on down. But also, if I was an HR professional, why do I need this book? Why should I apply this approach?
Because true diversity does not look at D&I strictly through a sociology lens. It adds sociology, but it looks at it through a business lens. Here are two facts. Fact number one: by 2024, the majority of the people in America will be non-white. Already today, the majority of the kids under the age of 12 are non-white. So true diversity is cut the stuff that you're spending money on to shame people, make them feel bad, and preach to them. versus this is our new world.
Hold on one second, Jesus. I think this is the maintenance people. The light is. Hold on one second. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Hi. Yeah. I'm doing an interview though. Come here, DLG. DLG, come here. All right, thank you. So let's take that again, just so that it's clean.
So true diversity.
Now I'm going to lead you into the question. Okay. So, we talk about throughout the book that the diversity D&I approach needs to be a top-down decision from the highest levels of the C-suite and senior management. It has to be a decision from there. And then also, if you're an HR manager, tell me about why you want to take this approach. Why true diversity?
Okay. Because true diversity separates itself from a lot of other books, programs that look at DE&I through a sociology lens. True diversity, of course, integrates some sociology. However, true diversity is about business, and you're not going to make businesses truly diverse unless businesses can see that this is the new world that we're living in terms of our customer base and our business. Businesses do not exist to create the next great step in sociology. They exist for the next great step in business so they can invest back into the communities and the businesses that they serve. So if you want someone to gain more out of a DE&I exercise, they've got to be able to see what's in it for me. If they don't see what's in it for me, you get resentment. We have a whole chapter dedicated to why DE&I programs don't work. Well, they don't work because there's resentment from both sides. Those who are non-diverse resented for stress caused by these programs, and resentment because there are people who are non-diverse who are trying their best to hire, train, integrate, and understand it, but they feel shamed throughout the program. Now, those who are diverse also get resentment because they're thinking to themselves, how many more of these do we have to sit through before we actually see a tangible change? All right, this isn't going to change anything. And then I was speaking to a good friend of mine who basically said, you know what, Jesus, and he's African American. He said, I resent these programs because I work with some non-diverse people who get it. And at the end of the program, they look at me like it's my fault that they're going through this. I'd rather not even do it this way. So what true diversity says is, people, look, you get a group of people together, you have a challenge, a business challenge. Some people don't like talking about business, but let's just talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. By looking at it through a business lens, you should be able to put away those things that separate people if they truly understand that good medicine is good business, good cooking is good business, good whatever you're in the business of doing is good business. Whatever you do well is going to come back and it's going to reward people. And rewarding human beings is one of the best ways to get them to continue to perform better. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but with true diversity, you follow this approach. No one should feel shamed. No one should feel like they are not doing something of value. I think there's an example in the book from Bank of America in Baltimore where they had to create what was technically a wasteland area. into one of the greatest ports. And the manner in which they went about this, it was the diversity of jobs, the diversity of people, the diversity of educations, the diversity of it was an incredible example of how you bring local community, outside community, everyone together, and everyone benefits. When you do that right, everyone gets lifted.
I love that. And I am a converted person in terms of this approach, because it does work. It does work. And I think that this approach is far more advanced than what's being applied today. So that's one of the reasons why I think people should apply this approach and also read the book. Speaking of, this was 2.5 years of work. Writing a book is not easy, of work and research. And, the book is thoroughly researched. What made you want to do it, and what do you want people to get from this book?
What made me want to do it is sitting through 20 plus years of programs. I, as a Hispanic, look, what's interesting? I am Latino whose background is from Spain, and somebody might say, "Oh, you just don't get it because they can't tell who you are." Just take a look at my name. I can't write my name without somebody knowing who the heck I am. So what convinced me to write this book is you shouldn't see the name. I can help you sell more pharmaceutical product and get it in the hands of people who need it. You should never sell anything pharmaceutical wise to people who don't need it. That should be criminal. But people who need it should not be without it. And nothing burns me more than seeing elderly or minorities, especially elderly minorities, that don't have access to some of the newer drugs because the companies failed them. The fact that there's health inequity today is because the companies failed, and government and market access and managed care and all that all failed people.
A few more questions before we wrap it up. But one thing that you said just then, I think is that makes our book a little bit different than a lot of these books, is talking about age, right? Because even if people are digging deep in diversity, one group that is often overlooked is diversity in age, right? Talk about that a little bit and why that's important to you.
I lost my job as an executive in the pharma industry at the age of 57. And ageism hit me right between the eyes. When you use these search engines to apply and you put down the year of your graduation from college, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how old you are. But I must have applied for 100 roles before somebody actually said yes to an interview. And I still didn't get it through that. I got it through someone else. So if you think I tell people, if you look at all of the different ways you can discriminate in America, you can discriminate on color, sex, sexual orientation, religion, height, weight. Fine, those are all subsets. But eventually, all those subsets get old.
Mm-hmm.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them. So then try to have one of those subsets and be old. And then you watch how hard life is out here.
I think that's the next book, Jesus. I think I just had a friend personally who's, like me, mid-40s, and was terminated, and everybody that they terminated, I don't know what their HR department was thinking. Literally everyone they terminated was over the age of 40. Like literally every last person, and which we know is obviously against the law. And so I told my friend, I said, you definitely have, my lawyer hat went on. I was like, yeah, don't sign that release just yet, because if you can prove that 100% of the people that were terminated in this layoff were over 40, that's like, prima facie, what we call in the law, law,
Prima
prima
facie,
facie, right?
yeah.
But we don't talk about it enough, because then you go back, because then if you're someone who still needs to work, going back into the job force, people are not looking for that as a prong of diversity. And I think that's a misstep, because one thing that I know in my culture, in African American culture, is we look to our elders for wisdom. Well, we used to. And when I was growing up, I sat at my grandfather, who I call Big Daddy. I sat at his feet, and my grandmother, and we listened to their stories and listened to their experiences. And I think that's one thing that is lost across all cultures, is our reverence for experience and knowledge. And so anyway, if you think about doing another book, I think that should be your next book. A couple more questions. So what's next for you, in this space? What is the dream, so to speak, in terms of, are you out on the speaking circuit? What's next for you in this space?
So I've spoken to a couple pharma companies about how to change their approach, but where my real heart and love is reaching kids. I gave a talk recently to a Boys and Girls Club, and they gave me 30 minutes. And I said, kids, you know what? They gave me 30 minutes to speak. I don't think your attention span is more than 30 seconds. So I said, so I'm going to keep this real short. So I'm going to tell you what my goal is, and then I'll tell you what I told them. I said, my goal is to get our youth to not carry a victim bag over their shoulder. They should not carry that monkey of being a victim right on their shoulder. They need to take a look at uh, at themselves and say, I want to be in the driver's seat. I don't want to be a victim. So I said to them, I said, look, you're going to hear a lot of people give you a lot of advice. There's only one decision you need to make, and it goes two ways. That decision is, do I stay in school, get an education or some kind of a trade? I don't care if you learn how to make pizzas, man. The richest person in Morris Plains, New Jersey, is a guy who owns a pizza place by the name of Tony's. Okay? I don't care what you do, but you do something, and then you make the calls. Or you don't go to school, don't get a trade, don't get good at something, and be a victim. And my heart, my passion is to reach the youth and say, look, the numbers are in your favor. I just told you we are going to be the majority by 2024. You already got the numbers. If you've got the numbers, then you need the tools. You get the tools, you got the numbers. Now you can make decisions, and you can make rules. Without it, you can't. You're just numbers.
Amen. And one of the things that I think is so important in understanding is our society, as a global society and a global economy, is rapidly and ever changing, right? And we hone in on that throughout all of the chapters and throughout the entire book, that this isn't really a choice anymore. If you want to succeed in this global economy and in this global world, you have to develop some type of diversity approach. And so, in summation, what what do you want to leave when someone finishes reading this book? If you could sum it up in a sentence, what do you want them to know about the need and the call? Because I think one of the things we talk about is the immediacy of it, right? This isn't something that you can put off till next year or 5 years from now. The time is now. What is the other thing that you want in some people to take away from reading True Diversity, Going Beyond the Pie Graph?
So there's an old saying that says that the business of business is business. I want to change it to the business of business is diverse business, because one approach, one solution, one lens, you're going to be a dinosaur. And that's what I want to change. Now, I love asking people, describe an American. American could be black, white, yellow, right? Mocha, it could be whatever. It could be tall, could be short, could be skinny, could be fat, could be Jewish, could be Catholic, could be Muslim. I said, the word American, it says diversity already.
Yep.
And this really hit me just a couple weeks ago. I was on our sales award trip, and we are in Monaco. And I sat down for a lunch with my wife. We get two menus. Hers has no prices on it. Mine has prices on it. And I said to myself, you imagine that happening in America? You'd have the women groups shutting down that restaurant, picketing outside. And it made me think, is America perfect? Hell no. But I've traveled enough to say probably the best damn place and the most tolerant place in the world. And it's up to us to keep it moving in the right direction and not go backwards. But with trust, oh man, I'm looking at this and I had three daughters. My oldest daughter is on the extreme side of women's rights. If she would have set that restaurant, she would have blown the lid. And I just said, thank God we live in America when I saw that.
And that's another thing that we share. You and I are perfect examples of how and why America works. Like you said, we are not perfect and we can get better and we should be pushing to get better. And I think that we make the case for that, a business case, a personal case, a community case in this book. I want to thank you for allowing me to come on this journey with you. I have, in preparation for this, I reread the book and, if I may say so ourselves, we did a damn good job. And it is informative, like I said, well researched. And then your concepts that you brought to the table just, I think, are really the next realm and next level of the way we look at diversity. And so I encourage everyone who has not read the book to get the book, True Diversity, Going Beyond the Pie Graph. And we talk about a lot of things. It's an easy read, it's a fun read, but it's a very informative and enlightening read. And so one last thing, if I wanted to book you to come talk to me and my corporate people or my organization, how do I get in touch with you, Jesus?
Go on my website, www.t as in Tom diversity, tdiversity.com. And you'll see my email, which is first name Jesus, last name LealRPH @gmail.com.
Thank you. And I am on social media at Nathan H. Williams. And my company website is iN-Hale.com. And I just want to say thank you, Jesus. And also a very, very, very special thank you to my business partner of over 20 years, Richard E. Pelzer II, for always supporting our efforts and being our engineer today. And if you have any questions, email us, reach out to us, but definitely go get our book, True Diversity, Going Beyond the Pie Graph. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.